on average, about 40% of flowers go to waste, which is massive in the industry. And with Freddie's, we try and target under 5%. 3 years ago, you could not buy on our website a one-off box to someone if you weren't a subscriber.
You say, no, this is our lane, this is our model, this is the only way to work with us. That takes a lot of guts.
If you're just looking at one attribution method, you're just blindsiding yourself.
Can you let us know anything about like what a good CAC or a good CPA looks like at Freddie's?
It's a very competitive world in these kind of spaces. You can lose those spaces and those partnerships as quickly as you gain them.
So was it successful in scaling your acquisition of new customers?
I think if you can get that model to work, it's really beneficial and it does drive the performance of Meta quite hard.
If you could double the spend on new user acquisition cost, where would you go?
Is introducing that new spend, are we just increasing our CPA, or actually, has the volume increased there? From then, we've managed to work with partners where we've got that, as you said, it's just a win-win-win.
So do you like the milk bottles?
I actually do.
Yeah?
Do you want to know what's inside them?
Probably nothing, I would imagine. Are they empty?
And it's just painted on. That was an idea of ours, but
that would look unrealistic. It's Tresemme.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So I thought you'd be more impressed by that. And then like these, I'm just going to expose all our little tricks now. These are stuffed with tissue paper, so we didn't have to use as many M&Ms as we would.
That's fair.
Yeah, because we're cheap. But yeah, it is. They are all still edible. It should be.
Yeah. If you need a topping, you take one out.
Don't worry. I'm not going to try the Cheerios in the back.
You can have them if you want.
No, I'm
they're real.
All right.
But yeah, when we arrived today at the studio here in, where is it? Kensington, Parsons Green? What would you call it? Parsons Green. There was a horde of mums with pushchairs taking up the whole street, and we had to kind of navigate our way through very carefully. But then we immediately saw Freddie's Flowers, a beautiful Freddie's Flowers bike with the logo and all of the flowers in there, and then a couple of reps from Freddie's.
Yeah.
And which was a crazy coincidence, given we knew we were meeting you for the pod today.
Yeah, I would love to say it was a coincidence, but
Well, we went over to them and said to them, "Hey, we're meeting James, James Newman up here, doing a pod later." And they went, "Oh, wow, cool." And they were like, "Maybe that's why we're working here today."
Right.
And it's not the case.
Turns out there's Jesse's house, which is a very bougie, I guess you'd say like nursery, not nursery.
Yeah.
Soft play.
It's soft play.
Yeah.
Play cafe, but very posh.
Yeah.
Cafe, which is the right type of audience. So it's very well placed bike.
So it is a coincidence.
Absolutely coincidence.
They were almost implying that you demanded they be here selling Freddie.
Although I did tell the head of sales yesterday that I was on a podcast, but if she had found out where it was, I'd be very impressed.
Yeah, and to act that quick.
Yeah.
But how many reps are there? Like how many members of that team are there?
I actually don't have the exact figure. That'd be the head of sales, but we're quite sizable. It's a good kind of segue into it, I guess, with how Freddie's actually came to be.
Sure.
Their whole sales model initially was face-to-face and direct sales. And that's how kind of Freddie's Flowers came to be. He actually founded the business after working for Abel & Cole. So he came out of university. His parents owned a flower shop. So his dad owned a flower shop and his mum was a florist. Initially, he wasn't maybe going to follow in the footsteps until he started working actually for Abel & Cole. He did direct sales, exactly what the guys on the streets were doing. Yeah. Back then, it was more door knocking. So you go around actually in Parsons Green, this type of area, knocking on the doors. And he took that idea from Abel & Cole's of like face-to-face sales and then applied that to flowers. And one of the amazing things about the subscription side of things is, and with the flower industry, there's so much waste. So on average, about 40% of flowers go to waste, which is massive in the industry. And with Freddie's, we try and target under 5% waste. And part of that is actually the subscription model. So when he came up with the idea, it's a great subscription model. So I know exactly how many flowers I need to order and and building it on that kind of face-to-face direct sales from his experience at
that's a really
Yeah.
interesting sort of origin story. Do you think he still gets out there for the occasional sort of sales face-to-face?
I think he's he no longer kind of explores the streets, but he is still very much kind of, I say, very involved in the flowers, the arrangements. Actually does a lot of creating those arrangements. He's in all those kind of like flower sign-offs, trying to create the very best arrangements. And that's the thing with Freddie's as well, why that kind of model works so well is that, from like a Bloom and Wild, you might have an endless, you go on their website and you're like, gosh, what do I choose for the flowers? Freddie's, we've got quite a more limited range, but we make sure everything is the top quality. And because it's subscription, we're buying in the quantities that we can work directly with the growers and really have that say to be like, well, if it's not to our standard of quality, then we can actually just, make sure that it's not going in the boxes to the customers.
That subscription thing is really interesting though. So was Freddie's because Freddie's really did sort of, and we can talk about the origin story. We want to dive into that even further. But like Freddie's has been deemed as, from my perspective in the world of marketing, a huge success, like in a huge rise, and quite a pioneer and an innovator. And how much of that was the subscription, as that subscription model that you just described hadn't really been applied to the flower industry?
Yeah, I think, there'll probably be arguments of like who started it first in terms of was it Bloom Wild? No, they had a bit of subscription, but Freddie's was solely subscription. Actually, to the point where it was about 3 years ago, you could not buy on our website a one-off box to someone if you weren't a subscriber. So for the bulk of Freddie's history, like 7, 8 years, it was purely subscription, and that was very unique.
That takes a lot of guts to have that conviction in your model.
Yeah,
to say I want to buy some flowers from you. I want to give you my money.
Yeah,
I want to place an order, but you say no. This is our lane. This is our model, and this is the only way to work with us. That takes a lot of guts.
And it's also very different because it was targeting less gifting. Is I guess the bulk of the demand is out there is for people sending gifts as like anniversaries, birthdays, and that is, when you look at Google, that's the searches for sending flowers and stuff is, insane. We look at the search demand for flower subscriptions, very, very small, but so we have to generate the demand for it. And yeah, so that whole kind of subscription model and leaning into it was more of a self-purchase, because you're targeting people who regularly buy flour from the supermarket, and then it's that element of convenience. And the first thing the sales people always ask is, do you buy flowers? And if they say no, they're like, see you later. If they say yes, then they can convince them. So it's always that kind of trying to transition away from like the supermarkets, who you forget are actually actually one of the biggest sellers of flowers, both in the UK and also internationally.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think this is going to be a great podcast for anybody who's in that D2C subscription business space, because clearly, Freddie's is a trailblazer in that respect. So yeah, let's jump into it. So welcome to the Marketing Over Milkshakes podcast, James Newman. Cheers.
Cheers.
I can't really enjoy your milkshake.
Thank you.
And you've got a banana one there. We've got chocolate ourselves, and enjoy.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm going to reel off a few facts about yourself, and then we can get into sort of the nitty gritty of marketing at Freddie's. So you are head of performance marketing at Freddie's Flowers. You're a highly accomplished marketer. You've been in the space a long time. You've worked in the marketing agency world, consultancy side, before working brand side, likes of Ryman's, and there was one other, Boo Avenue, previously. And you're responsible for all digital marketing at Freddie's. On the customer acquisition, retention economics, and performance efficiency. Responsible for CAC, payback, channel mix, and scalable growth. I'm getting to the end. And you're operating at the intersection of brand, data, and real world logistics. That's a lot to come out of, and it's a
and
lot
you're a
to
really
manage,
nice guy. Yeah, really nice to work with as well. And you're a pretty good operator from what we've seen.
Yeah,
and an expert in the space.
Yeah, we've been working together for is it about a year now, or a little over?
Just over, probably just over a year. I think it's been great on the affiliate side. It's actually one of our biggest subscription channels at the moment. So it's that's really good.
That's good, and we'll move on to the different channels later on, and the differences between them. And I was going to go and do a few key facts about Freddie's itself, and then I'll probably pass over to you because you clearly and obviously know a lot more about it than me. But yeah, just so for anybody who's not aware, subscription first flower business with weekly, fortnightly flower deliveries direct to consumers. You can correct me if any of this is wrong. Built on the subscription-based traditional face-to-face sales model like we just discussed, known for its distinctive brand voice, strong referral engine, and disciplined growth, operating in a category with tight margins, high perishability, and zero room for bad ops and forecasting.
This is our side.
So yeah, I mean, you've been there for a few years now, and you told us something interesting when we spoke earlier this week, that when you came in, it was post-COVID, and you were only actually relying on one sort of performance channel at the time.
Yeah, I think many brands, especially like pure play online retailers, COVID was great for a short amount of time. Flowers, especially our proposition, which is mainly targeting, self-buying of flowers. The main marketing messaging at the time was about brightening your home when you're trapped in your home for ages. Obviously, they saw enormous, very quick growth, probably artificial growth because of the inflated demand. And then in the years after, invested in a lot of things. We, some of them good, some of them not so good, try to expand probably a bit too quickly going into the likes of the US and Holland. So business obviously contracted post-COVID. And, with that, I guess to make sure that the business stayed afloat, it meant that we didn't stop doing influencer marketing. We stopped doing, investing to the same levels in Meta. So actually we became very reliant on Facebook and Meta as a channel following that kind of post-COVID years. And our base was, in a quite rapid decline after that, quite big acquisitions. And that's where, I guess the role came in of trying to diversify that mix, build Meta back up again from what it was of not just one channel, but also, I guess, a very singular concept that had worked time and time again that was fatiguing, which was this brighten your home kind of self-care video that had done very well. And after 2 years, it's amazing that it did so well after that long. It's a testament to the concept in itself, but we didn't really we were just very still reliant on that kind of one kind of concept when I came in.
So how many channels are you sort of invested in right now?
I'd say it's a broader mix. So we've got the affiliate channel, brand partnerships within that is a huge play. We're like the whole gift with purchase movements and loyalty is now one of our biggest kind of affiliate channels. We'll get into the LTV later, but it's kind of we've operated in a way that it pays back. We've grown influencers again from scratch in I guess a bit more of a profitable way than it was being operated before. Previously influencer activity, we're spending, when it was, COVID times, they're spending maybe 10 or 15K on an influencer, and they were kind of chasing the success of this with this one amazing influencer, Anna at it, and she was a YouTuber, and it was, fantastic. She did amazing, about 600 subscriptions off the back of this one influencer, and the team spent from then trying to chase this kind of very golden egg type thing, to not much success really. And it kind of drove the channel into the ground. So we've really tried to build it back around, like, actually as a channel in its own right, that it can stand its, that actually is profitable as a channel, and paid back, whether that's, a mix of commission modeling, mix of fixed fees. And now we are kind of going to that world of AI for like sourcing and trying to find out who to kind of work with in a very tightly constrained team. It's an extra half a person that we wouldn't be able to afford without that type of tools. So we're having a good mix, I'd say, between affiliates and, now we've got Meta. We've focused a lot on creative diversity, which, I'm sure everyone's tired of hearing the Andromeda update, which has got a lot of traction recently, but it's been around for like the last year and a bit. It's focusing on, creative is the new targeting and all that. Actually investing in that creative diversity, trying to get concepts that move away from that one singular concept, and it's actually paid back really well for us in terms of like rebuilding that as a channel. We're now, I'd say, building back up to the spends that we were a couple of years ago, in that, whilst then having influencers working, whilst having kind of these big brand partnerships with the likes of like Look Fantastic and others kind of running.
That's awesome. And you mentioned earlier that obviously flowers are perishable.
Yes.
So that adds that adds a very unique kind of sort of challenge to the marketing as well, right? How does that shape your decisions when you're like running? Because you came from retail. We mentioned in the bio that Jamie read, you were in retail for the longest time, an agency side, and then you came over to subscriptions.
Yeah.
Which is a different world, right? And we're going to talk about it a lot because there's a lot of like specific strategies that you have to, and ways that you have to look at it that's different in subscription. But then on top of that, your subscriptions perishable products as well.
Yeah.
How does that influence your work?
Well, I think, with it being subscriptions, actually kind of plays into the perishability of it. That was kind of one of Freddie's reasons why he started as a subscription business, because when you are forecasting sales, you've got that regular orders, you've got an active customer base, X amount of people, X percent of that customer base is ordering a week. And you can do a pretty good forecast that's, as I said, within kind of 5%. So when we're doing buying, it makes it a lot easier for when we're doing kind of acquisitions. We've got a bit of lead time in terms of before it then starts ramping up. So from a forecasting point of view, they've got to be really hot on the short-term forecast in terms of like acquisitions within the next, 4 to 6 weeks. And it means that we have to be very realistic from that point of view. We also now have the gifting business, which launched about 3 years ago. And I think we've taken the same approach to gifting as we have to subscription, in that as a business, we'd always rather sell out than kind of be left with 40% waste.
I'd imagine you have quite quick. Imagine that if you were to, in fact, I don't say I imagine, I know because I've been a customer, but you have quick delivery times as well, right?
Yeah, so everything is basically delivered next day.
So on gifting, I could order something and then it's going to be next day.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you have it, and if you don't have it, then you're saying you'd rather be out of stock than have oversourced.
So we got Valentine's Day, Mother's Day coming up, like making sure, we've got a person that's really dedicated to like short, medium term forecasting. And if you think about, times that by the number of SKUs, because if you don't sell it, if I say from marketing, I'm going to sell 100 flowers, tomorrow, it's not just 100 flowers, it's 100 flowers of, is it the letterbox, cascading chimes, or whatever the flowers are called. The it goes down to the variant level. So the more complexity from a SKU range you have, the more complexity from a forecasting point of view. So, you really need that person there, looking at the data every day, making sure that I work very closely with that team to say, hey, we've noticed that on Google we're starting to steal impression share, our spend's increasing, quickly making sure that that's feeding into their kind of short-term buying kind of forecasts. That obviously has a flip side of, Valentine's Day last year, we sold out, I think it was like a day early, and you're like, oh yes, you could have had missed sales. So this year we'll kind of edge it up, but we won't go, we'll make sure that we're edging it up versus like what we can say we can do versus the growth of the base, that thing. Whereas I think in retail, sometimes the forecasting and the marketing team are just completely not talking to each other. I think that's one of the things that I've really realized here versus previous ones, even from like, Evans Cycles and specifically where, the forecast would be very top down. They would buy to a very top down forecast, and they wouldn't have that, yes, you need a stretch target, but also you probably need something realistic from a buying point of view. So you're not left with, 1,000 stock that you then have to discount at 70% off later.
So if you guys have a stretch target, too much of a stretch target, then you might end up with a skip full of, dead flowers.
Yeah, and it's about like communicating it. It doesn't mean we don't have stretch targets and this kind of thing. It just means that we have to have that in between of like
accuracy
of like this is our run rate, and this is what we're aiming for. And it also forces you to have more of a plan to get to that level. Not that we don't have a plan, but when something's a bit top down in terms of where it's coming from, you're kind of scrambling to get there. Whereas actually you have to have a very solid plan of how you're going to get that growth.
Because the commercial consequences are greater.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
What happens in supermarkets then when I say supermarkets, could talk about e-florists, could talk about whoever, who just sort of sell straight flowers from a warehouse, then are they just landfilling all of that?
Yeah, they have different mechanisms,
obviously not landfill because it's green, but like they're just dumping it.
Yeah, so sometimes some will try and do again like discount. So you see, Bloom Wild will do that. We've got too many of this. Here's 25% off. But then you're kind of training customers on that. Can I make discounted?
What about potpourri?
Yeah, but that's like with Freddie when he's saying when he. That's one of his observations of his parent shop was the waste of it is just really, that's what he really wanted to tackle. And so it's, I really hope we continue, as we kind of grow that gifting business, that's, we're really trying to kind of commit to that and still leverage that.
Cool. So just to back up a bit, we touched on influencers before, and you mentioned how much of a big focus that was to diversify a couple of years ago. So how does a brand and how do you view influencer marketing, both like is brand building exercise to ROI calculation?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess Freddie's is still quite a performance marketing business, I would say. It's come from direct sales, knocking on doors. So everything there is immediately attributable to a sales agent. And I guess we're still in, I would say, in the infancy of, we don't have huge brand building budgets. Who knows in the future. I think when we approach influencers, we have approached it from monitoring the impact. We don't necessarily just look at the direct, click-throughs. We do a lot of coupon code, like most subscription businesses. It's a lot of coupon code attribution. To be honest, having come from the likes of GA4 and that kind of thing, is actually quite good in a cookieless world. It's more accurate in terms of the way.
If you can prevent it being leaked.
If you can prevent it from being leaked. Yeah. That's one. We do actually have quite a good grip on that, Freddie's, just because we use it so much for attribution and we really crack down on it. But yeah, we have that is our kind of first layer, but we also look at, as we've invested more in Meta and influencers, we look at like a blended new customer acquisition target. So we'll know that when we introduce a new channel, our average hovers around a certain CPA for the business. And that's pretty consistent, when you've got Meta operating at a certain CPA. Obviously, if Meta's CPA spikes, you see your overall blended CPA spikes for new customers. But it means that when we introduce a new channel, we look at that kind of overall, all of our new customer acquisitions across every channel over all of our media spend. And that really now enables us to see, is introducing that new spend, are we just increasing our CPA, or actually, has the volume increased there? Because what you'll find is it generally tends to, hover around an average, give or take. We did a actual trial with Demand Gen in November, which is Google's new kind of YouTube product there. I'd say we probably needed to nail the creative. We didn't quite nail the creative, I think, for that one, but it's a great example of maybe where it didn't work, and you could, maybe Google's reporting in their measurement studies, oh, you've got really good brand lift. And it's like, well, great. We had a bit of brand lift, and we ran it for, a long enough period of time to be able to get a read. Obviously you'd expect CPAs, they start, they rise quite a bit, and we had forecasted, our CPA is going to rise, our blended CPA is going to rise, and then over time it should start coming down. It did edge down, but not to the level of where we needed it to be from a business to kind of maintain kind of profitability.
So I get this right. So you're not comparing like channel to channel, like CPAs, like specifically. You're looking
it's a bit of a mix. I think with any business, you can't just rely on one. If you're just looking at one attribution method, you're just blindsiding yourself. There's no silver bullet of attribution. You've got to, I think we use, coupon code attribution. We've got GA4. We're looking at this blended CPA, and we're looking at the platform data. What's Meta reporting? What's our post-purchase survey doing? So we're looking really across 5 different sources, and we're looking for like correlations of, when my Meta reported CPA, Meta volume doubles, is that reflected in my actual new customer numbers, or is it actually only really increasing by 25%? So we use a blend of all these channels to actually kind of get this right mix. But the blended CPA is really good for when you introduce a new channel, and then you normalize that to a platform CPA or a post-purchase, what your post-purchase is saying, which we found, or like what GA4 is saying on a last click. There's normally a kind of ratio that you can work out.
Got it. Can you let us know anything about like what a good CAC or a good CPA looks like at Freddie's?
Yeah, obviously I can't reveal the actual one. Probably we have to edit that one out of it. But it's all in relation. We look at lifetime value. I think we're quite harsh on ourselves, maybe versus other subs brand. We look at this thing called a trip, which is within the initial subscription period. So as an example of that, I subscribe tomorrow, I stay for 6 months, and then I cancel my subscription. That's one trip. That trip can last for 6 months. It can last for 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 years. See, that's not our average. It'd be great if everyone subscribed for 7 years. But it just means that if I cancelled and then restarted, for instance, that wouldn't be included in what we call lifetime value.
Interesting.
That then gets attributed to the restart channel. So we have acquisition channels, and then we have what we like to call like reacquisition channels, on the basis that in most occasions you're paying again to get that person back. They're not just coming back for free.
That makes sense. Otherwise, you're flattering your lifetime value for the purpose of net new customer acquisition.
Yeah.
So I think that makes a lot of sense.
There's obviously different ways of doing it, and we're trying to look at we do have like multi-trip views, and it's important to look at that more holistically, because without the initial customer, you wouldn't have got the restart. And I don't think we've necessarily got it perfect yet, but it's a very good way of saying, looking at, we tend to look at like a 3-year profit LTV, and then we look at the cost of that we're getting, and because of the coupon code attribution, actually, to an extent, we also get that. Every channel is normally associated with some level of coupon code, whether it's a free vase, which actually helps increase our LTV because the flowers look better in our vases, which I've recently witnessed, having seen some of our content not in our vases. But it just means that you can then track the lifetime value at a channel level and even down to a partner level. So when we, work with certain affiliates or certain channels, we know we can set the CPA targets based on their LTV. Like for us, some of the mobile phone providers had, potentially because they skewed a bit more male, maybe people were abusing the fact that flowers can be used as a gift. So we know that kind of at Valentine's Day, we tend to switch off some of those like bigger first box discounts. Or we know that, we can only afford half the CPA for certain ones versus like, you look fantastic. It's probably female audience, very aligned. They actually say subscribed. We can actually go a bit higher there. So everywhere we're looking, we're setting the CPA targets to the kind of LTV and even like a predicted LTV. So we know that for new channels, you could say like, how do you know what a 3-year LTV is for influencers because you've never done it before? We have milestones we look at our retention after 4 weeks, after 6 and 8. And then that normally has we look at retention curves and we model data off that to be able to say roughly within a range what the predicted LTV is going to be.
It's so scientific, and it's really impressive, and it's also, it makes so much sense that what you're saying as well. These models all make so much sense, but I think some brand, we work with a lot of companies, obviously, and everyone has a different approach. But yours is definitely up there with very scientific, very purposeful. How much of that was there when you came on board, and how much have you guys had to work out over the last couple of years?
I mean, to be honest, that is really the very bread and butter of a lot of subscription brands. They will do different LTV modeling. Some will use tech. There's some good tech providers out there for it. There's some that look at multi-trip, over the full lifetime value. I think what we've really tried to enforce is more like this year is when we've worked with those new partners, leaning more into the predicted side and working with the commercial team that we've got to develop out those models so that we can more quickly shut down what's not working. And I'd say, if I look back over last year, there were definitely a few ones where we probably should have shut it down a bit quicker. And similarly, there are probably a few ones where we go, actually, I think one of the benefits of us as a brand is we're quite like, and affiliates and the way it's going now in terms of these brand partnerships is that, you can be very, very kind of honest with the partner because it's, they're doing a gift with purchase. You want it to work for them and you. And we have very frank discussions with our kind of partners of, at the end of the day, they're getting a great discount on flowers or whatever it is. But if it's not kind of paying back there, then we just can't do those types of those offers. So we normally have very, frank discussions to say this is the level of payback we need for you to have this,
You'll be showing them the data, right? So you've got trust, transparency.
Yeah.
That's always going to put you ahead because a lot of brands like to keep their data to themselves and act like a black box and just see what they can get away with. None of our clients, obviously, but like some companies in my past life that I've worked with selling traffic to them on a CPC, it's like very, very closed, and they just want it's like what's the max CPA you guys can pay for, or if it's an LT, what's the do you have like a matrix for LTV and CPA and everything, and they do have that, but they just don't want to share it, and they want to see how hard they can get the partner to work for as little as possible. The worst players in the space. Whereas you guys obviously on the other end of the scale, which makes so much more sense, and those are the more successful brands. Where it's like if we have a feedback loop going that's transparent, then they can reverse engineer their own success if it's possible.
Yeah.
You're going to pay them. You're going to pay them very, very well for driving the kind of customers that you need to see.
Yeah, and I'm a big, as I said, fan of that. I don't think we'd have some of the partnerships that we had today if we hadn't. I think we would have either lost them too soon, or that kind of thing. So I think we always have we'll try you, might try you out. And if we're doing it, some partners, we have a CPA that's higher, and that's on the basis of, they've said to us, our customers generally tend to have higher LTV for other sub-brands. So we might go, yeah, we'll test you out for X amount of subscriptions, and then we'll get a read on your kind of customer base. And then we'll kind of feed that back, because at the end of the day, it's a very competitive world in these kind of spaces, and like the gift with purchase spaces. And, you've got to be, you can lose those spaces and those partnerships as quickly as you gain them. And I think, it's a bit like, I guess more traditional marketing it is very kind of relational in that respect. And I think that's where that whole thing of, if it's working for them, it's working for you. So we always, for example, the gift with purchase, say like, are you hitting the targets your side? If you're not, or let's change the offer, let's change the messaging. Like, yep, we're hitting the targets our side, but if you need a bit more from us volume wise, or you're not quite seeing that performance, we always kind of work with them to change up the offer, change the wording, and all that kind of stuff.
That will be key to some of the success of the partnerships for sure.
Yeah, and just going back to, you mentioned that you might not have the perfect model or the perfect outlook or whatever, but for any subscription marketers, brands sort of listening, you do follow something that is fairly standard. And, if you could just spend a few more words on that and, what they should be having as that standard, in your opinion.
Yeah, I think there's two sides of it, which is, that LTV to CAC is just so important, and kind of reiterating what I said there, but it's not getting to. I think the other mistake a lot of brands can do in this space, specifically in the subscriptions, get carried away with volume. Especially if you've got quite high targets, in all the reporting, you'll normally see the volume first, especially with those new partners where you might not have a read yet on the LTV. If something's doing mass volumes, it might be too good to be true from an LTV point of view, which always comes down the line. So it might look great initially, but then it's kind of reining that back and actually setting CPA targets to what it is, because I think there's a lot of, not pressure in the industry, but it's very easy to get carried away with being like, well, if I put my CPA up a bit more, I'll get that much volume. But then actually, you're not really making money anymore, and then it's just a race to the bottom or race to the top in terms of everyone having CPAs that are actually unaffordable. And there's some channels that I would say are more akin to that. So
is it be patient and sort of don't so be patient and wait for the proof in the pudding.
Yeah, in a way, or just like nail that predicted LTV, and we're about to work with a partner on that front to be able to get a quicker read on that as well. It goes down to like what the type of card that the customer's paying with, and they kind of model it at a much more granular level.
Oh, so regardless of channel or publisher type, whatever,
like incorporating all that data, like a channel that they come through, but also like, I guess, more granular than that of like, did the, like, what payment type? Are they using Apple Pay or are they using Klarna? They're using, if they're using Klarna on a subscription basis, they're probably not going to be a very good, monthly payment customer, and it uses all that type of information just to give a better read of, is this going to be a good customer or a bad customer based on your data,
like geolocation, like their location in the country perhaps as well, and
all the kind of postcode data.
What time of day they're purchasing? Would that matter? Like someone who's buying flowers at 2 a.m. might not be that sticky. I don't know.
I don't know. We found the more the kind of Uber Eats type placements, but I think going back to your question, I think it's just really at LTV to CAC, but also like, for those other channels, for me, it's looking at that blended CPA and almost like a blended LTV to CAC as well. So that you're really sure of like, I'm investing in Meta, is it having an organic impact? And, when I do these new channels, is it contributing to the overall volume, or if I just added a new channel and not really seeing the uplift? And giving it enough time as well when we do any new kind of business cases, especially if it's more of a like upper funnel type thing, we make sure that we're managing expectations around, this is going to be a 12-week test. And, my CPA might start up here, but it should come down to here. And that's what we saw where a good example is that we introduced upper funnel ads in Meta. So we always used to go after the conversion, bottom of funnel kind of the purchase conversion types. We'd never go for more kind of awareness where you get very cost-effective reach. And we introduced this as a channel. And what we saw is that actually, at the end of the day, our kind of blended CPA actually stayed stable. And what we're seeing is that we had increased our reach of people that were never seeing the ads before. We had gotten into a cycle in Meta of showing the same ad over, to the same people over and over again.
Interesting.
And going up one stage in the funnel, we targeted it on new incremental reach over 12 months. And the whole point of that upper funnel ads was increasing people that had never been exposed to ads and getting them down the funnel. Right. When you looked at the CPA of that campaign obviously on a coupon code basis, you'd be like, what are you doing? But when you look at it blended, you can actually see it actually stabilized our CPAs much more.
And did the volume go up? So was it successful in scaling your acquisition of new customers?
Yeah, and that's, as I say, over the last year since we've kind of had that, we've been able to have a more consistent CPA. So we'd get some months where, if it's a seasonal month where your CPA would be really good. I'd say out of season, January is a very good month for us. As we go into February, it starts to spike. Having that kind of upper funnel and fueling the new people really helped with, as we actually went out the season, even if the spend's not necessarily increased, normally our CPA would have spiked in those ones. We'd be able to kind of actually keep it very consistent and then start to scale it.
What's the CTA on those, or the call to anyone who's not aware of all these terms we're using? The CTA being a call to action, the action that you want the person to take when you're showing them the ad. Normally it's purchase or buy here, but we'll use this offer. But in upper funnel, what was the action?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's maybe less of a specific action within the ad, to be honest. It's not necessarily there might be a kind of subscribe now CTA at the end or that kind of thing, but it is much more looking at the engagement of like the hook rate and then the actual view through rate afterwards. And really for us, it's producing content that still it's not just having any old video in that. We found that we have to, so we can't, for example, a lot of our organic posts at the moment are performing great. They've got, Freddie doing this thing called the flower frog. They're very artistic. They're really great. They don't relate really to the subscriptions at the moment, which means that if we put that type of content, it would get great engagement, but it wouldn't be driving any consideration into subscriptions. So it's still very much a consideration ad of like more of an explainer around what the product is, what the subscription is, so that it's not just a general Freddie's flowers.
Yeah, there's not
ad.
DR.
Yeah, it's still going into like the proposition of the subscription, and then we're conceptualizing around looking at the hook rates to make sure that people are engaged with the video, making sure that it's that new incremental reach. So we generally tend to find that when we introduce a new ad with new hooks and messaging, then we reach new people, and then that might fatigue and start showing to the same people over and over again, and then we freshen up the ads.
What type of hooks, like, again, without going too much into the weeds, too specific, but like what type of hooks do you generally go back to time and time again?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like we've still got this very good kind of unboxing and arranging type of video concept, and I think for us, it's where the showing the flowers fully blooms and someone's like really just placing them down. I think that's one area that we're, about to work on a lot more is actually got like a new hire yesterday that's more focused on creative strategy and actually kind of almost restructured our meta, I would say, team for the new world. And they're going to be focused a lot more on those new concepts, getting those hooks out and growing on what we've already done. But yeah, I'd say at the moment it's a lot of very, very show-stopping looking flowers being placed in different locations, like fully bloomed.
I think that's sorry, I just want to go back because I think that's such a huge knowledge gem that you've dropped, and I just want to make sure that it's sort of like that we bullet point it, because obviously we don't run meta ads or anything like that for our clients. We run affiliate programs, brand partnerships, influencers. But I find it really interesting that your tip there was essentially for you guys anyway, and it makes sense, is that obviously a lot of focus always been on DR, direct response, on getting a sale from that ad, and the lower funnel. Mm-hmm. And then you've added upper funnel ads, and those don't directly convert to sales, but they've increased your total targeting pool of engaged users, and that itself has obviously driven up overall sales while keeping your costs per acquisition stable.
Yeah,
that's it in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, and even within Meta, it's just helped our Meta CPAs actually stabilize. So
that's that's a really good insight. And is there anything else that you think that? So I know that you, and sorry, I know you had a question, but the you came from retail, and you did quite a lot in retail, and then you moved to subscriptions. What do you think that retail brands or marketing managers, your sort of your counterparts in the retail in retail space, could learn from what subscriptions brands are doing that's quite unique? Apart from LTV,
LTV is done to death, but it really is that forecast. I think from and people are doing this in retail, but I think it's more a lot of retail businesses. I think definitely the ones that I've worked with have almost like a high-low sales model accidentally, or what they call where they normally set the prices high and then discount them heavily. But I think that a lot of brands in the UK, people love discounts, and I think sometimes again it's that chasing the volume of a lot of investment goes into sale periods. So one of the things that I would say also really comes from the subscription side is that we do is any promotion that we do, if we do a 50% off, that's a marketing cost, and I pay, that comes into my budget line of, well, if you're going to do 50% off, that's not going off your product margin, that's going into your, as a marketing spend almost. So when you look at ROI, a lot of the, we're looking at margin profit, is making sure that we're incorporating those discounts. And what you found that a lot of, sometimes in retail, the volume's really big in those sales period, and you always see sale ads because that's very easily attributable. It's people will convert, but when you layer in the marketing spend, what you've spent actually on the discount, you probably not make, even though your revenue might have, probably tenfolded, your profit's probably the same as when you were doing that, and you're then just, cheapening the brand and going down that discount route. So I think a lot of it is around, for me, like factoring in that kind of discount, almost making it more visible from a kind of positive point of view. And the second thing, which I think a lot of brands do already, but in that meta world, is, if you're going down that, it is very intensive from a creative point of view. You can't just go into it with, I've got my BA, my business as usual assets that, the brand team have got on the shoot, and I'm going to try and, repurpose those for meta. I think you've really got to invest in creative, in those like concepts that work, and really, investing in those kind of frameworks of like, what problem are you trying to solve, what you're trying to do, getting the good hooks and everything. That's not going to come from, I've got the the kind of static locations, you really got to build a case for the investment behind the creative.
We're seeing a lot of demand rev-wise actually from brands who on our influencer division, who want influencers. I guess you could call it UGC, but they want influencers recruited, not even with the primary goal of driving sales with them, although that's obviously being tracked and is important, but to create a huge bank of and test for the high, to get real world data on what's getting engagement, and then use it as creative. Sorry, have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, some of our kind of top performing ads at the moment have come from some of our influencer partnerships.
Has that been kind of passive, or has it been like a big drive to get a load of it in and then take the best of the bunch?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we've gone down the full, for example, we had a conversation with Small, and I think they do like 500 ads of UGC, and they're just, as I said, using that as a source, which works really well for them. I think what we try to find is that blend of the cost, because you do have to, want to license the content as well. There's some kind of cost involved in that. Making sure that we're getting using the right content on Meta. So I think we're starting to use it more. We also have very different offers between our influencer activity and Meta, which is maybe one disadvantage of the influencer strategy we're using. It just means that we normally take the best performing influencers and have to like recut and re-edit for a different offer. Or like we then work with them more specifically on an ad basis. But yeah, that's definitely growing. We're definitely finding that that's working more and more, but we haven't used it as turned our influencer channel yet into a creative fueling, because I think we're getting such good performance from some of our other kind of conceptualizing, which for us is more cost effective. But I think you got to do both really. You got to really experiment with it.
Yeah. Nice. I mean, why fix if it's not broken? If it's working, then there's risk involved, there's cost involved, upfront cost. But I do find it quite interesting. More and more brands are doing this and asking us to do this, which is out there and basically, get a load of collabs, get a load of content live, get rights to it all. Yeah. And if you're going sort of on the mid and micro level, it's not super expensive either. But it's not. It is a sunk cost really. And then, but the idea is that you get sort of real world engagement data instantly. And then you take the cream of the crop and run it on your ad creative, but it still needs to be done on like an industrial scale to have like the biggest impact. But some brands are doing it really, really well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, that's one thing we would actually, we are exploring, we are actually, as part of our kind of influence strategy, saying, do we actually go down that route more? For us with the flowers, the cost of the flowers, plus, to be honest, you've got to give them the vase as well, because we've recently started doing some tests on the likes of TikTok Shop, where we just do the flowers, and some of the vases that people have and the content that comes back, you probably wouldn't put that necessarily on an ad. And what we've found before is like having the vase is really essential for our offer. It improves the lifetime value of customers because, as I said, the flowers look a lot better. So for us, the sampling cost is actually quite high, right? As opposed to like a wild, when you're sending out a deodorant pack. Discussions with them is obviously the sampling cost is minute. Yeah. They don't have to. The influencer doesn't have to be in on the day to make sure that it goes into water. Fair. But it's. I think if you can get that model to work, it's really beneficial, and it does drive the performance of Meta quite hard.
Yeah. Imagine their margins are maybe
wild.
Yeah. So theoretically, now that we've covered a few of those different channels, theoretically, if you could double the spend on new user acquisition cost, like where would you go?
Yeah, I mean, any gift with purchase, I would encourage all brands to get a gift with purchase on their site selfishly. No, but obviously it's that gift with purchase is great for, has the benefits of increasing conversion rate.
Just explain it for people who maybe don't know the gift with purchase model.
Yeah, so you go, say for example, you're on, one of our partners we have is Look Fantastic, so I'll use them as an example, but you go on to their basket, and you add something to cart like normal. You'll see now like offers for various different brands, normally subscription brands, with, hey, you get 50% off your first box, and like a free vase or something, and they then add that offer to the cart, and then they can then redeem that offer with a partner. So from a customer point of view, they're getting a kind of added reward in terms of that kind of discount at another retailer's sites. So it helps with conversion rates, and they also get revenue from it because we're paying them a level of CPA. And then from our point of view, we're gaining that customer. Obviously, we're setting CPA targets in relation to the kind of discounts that we're giving. And then, we're getting kind of customers off the back. And the benefit of that is just scale of volume. Your customers getting a great experience from, having a variety of awards. And then, the partners obviously, having that experience of, it's quite a direct message. It's unlike having a display placement. You actually got something that people are engaging with. So, it's not necessarily a voucher code site where someone's going and searching for Freddie's flowers. On a voucher code site, they can only access that reward. They're only presented it at the time of checkout. So from a retailer point of view, the exposure is really good because it's push exposure. It's not like, I'm already decided to buy Freddie's flowers, I just want the discount. It's real. They might not even considered you. They might not have heard of you before. So it's really good exposure from that point of view.
Oh, it's a win-win. It's a win-win-win, which I think is quite rare.
Yeah.
When it's done properly, gift with purchase brand partnerships are fantastic. Like, to your point, obviously you're an evangelist for it, but I'm agreeing, which is that the customer gets something free or heavily discounted, like a really genuinely good offer. The retailer who's hosting the offers on their checkout is getting an extra revenue line that's going straight to their bottom line with no cost associated. And then you, the partner, obviously getting a source of new customer acquisition. Like, it's just such a great model. But the offer has to be good. That is the downside, and I think that is where that is where I think a lot of people get carried away. And I think initially when these things came out, the required CPAs were quite high, but then I think after, a lot of testing, you realize that there's a CPA that you're willing to pay based on kind of your LTVs, and you've really got to stick with that. And you can get because the subscription volumes can be huge, but really you could lose money quite easily with if you didn't set your CPA target right, because you got the cost of the discount plus a cost there. So it's really about, that's why it's a partnership, because and that's why talking to them and saying, I know when initially we worked with some of the partners, we had higher CPAs, but then the LTV data came back and we just said, look, quite honestly, they said, oh yeah, Freddie's is great. They love our customers love your offer, and they had quite really good quotes from it. This just said, actually, and we were quite transparent saying it needs to be this, otherwise we actually can't do this as a channel. We're not just we can't just, almost lose money on an offer. So, and then from then we've managed to work with partners where we've got that, as you said, it's just a win-win-win for everyone. But if you don't have that honest conversation around CPAs and if you don't get carried away with the volumes that it can bring, then well, your concern is CPA, and that's the one problem. So it's a win-win-win, but there's also problem. Right?
Yeah.
So the problem is your CPA has to work for you. That's your problem. The merchant needs a good CPA that works for them, but they also have another problem, which the merchant being the host merchant, they have to have a good offer that's actually going to convert, or they're not going to get any CPAs anyway, because it's pointless. You could say, I want to pay you £1,000 CPA, but if no one wants it because it's not really actually an offer, then it's pointless. And the reason I have this unique view on it, which is all sides of it, is that we work closely with a company called Rewards Bag. Shout out to Gary White, who's the founder, and they're doing amazing stuff. I think we've spoke about them before. They're doing really amazing stuff there, where they sort of have a load of tech and they facilitate, and there's these gift with purchase offers, but they've got some amazing amazing, I think I can say this, but they're on things like Trainline, huge host merchants, so big major retailers where they've got huge amounts of volumes, like hundreds of thousands, and look fantastic, and so the opportunity is huge. But then what they do is obviously they power the tech that makes the whole thing run. But they also spend, it seems to me like he spends a lot of their time going around and really hammering home hard to brands that want to appear on there that offer is not good enough. That needs to be better. The offer needs to be worth, at least I think £10-20 to the customer and no strings attached. And it's like, really, not everyone can do that.
No,
unless your business model is like coffee pods is a great example.
Well, that's why it's largely dominated by subscriptions where, you're looking at you've got, when you get a subscriber in, as I said, you can track the LTV quite consistently and you're not having to reacquire them to get them. So I think that's why it lends itself very well to subscription brands who are normally, when you look at the offers, it's it is your HelloFreshes, it is your Gustos, it is a lot of like packed coffees. It's a lot of those types of brands on there where they're doing kind of first big box discounts to get you in, to get you kind of hooked in, that then a portion of those will stay. And that's where from, as everything we've discussed, like what you can afford to then pay and what you can then afford to give as an upfront discount.
Yeah, and they're trying to keep so going back to the example of like Rewards Bag, I know they're trying to make sure that they're ultimately working for the merchants who are hosting the offers, because that's the supply. That's like the supply and demand equation, right? The supply is the most important thing to them, and rightly so. So they are basically like fighting that fight on their behalf to make sure that the offers are better and better and better. But then you've got this balance constantly happening of CPA and offer, because the merchants that you want to be on are big, strong brands that you want to have an affinity with. So you want it to be a big, respected, trusted brand and loads of traffic. And they then don't want junk running on their checkout.
Exactly.
Right? It devalues their site. So so we're talking about it being a win-win-win. It's the most amazing thing ever. It is, but it's also quite a balance and tricky to get right. But you guys are obviously are cracking it there, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And generally speaking, with the brand partnerships that you have in place, who are you dealing with on the other side? Like, are you dealing with other heads of performance management, or are you dealing with other sort of
so it really depends on where you're going through. Like, this is Rewards Bag, you're going through them, they're facilitating it. Like Tyviso, it's the same. You're dealing with someone acting on behalf of the brands. Sometimes it's more like directs for some of our like bigger partnerships. They normally have someone that ultimately becomes responsible for gift with purchase, or I don't know, a myriad of other, I'm sure they do a myriad of other things as well. But that, I think, as you said, it's about having those, being able to effectively communicate if you're going direct versus, if you're going through there, to be able to communicate like what's, to your point, what's the value to the customer? Like Freddie's has quite a good proposition in the fact that we're not a meal box. Most of the other offers on there are like meal box. Apple Music, the coffee's actually like having quite a unique product on there. Actually is quite good. But you've really got to kind of monitor it very closely.
Cool. Yeah. Good. I'm going to change gears slightly and put the spotlight a bit more on you and your history, because I think we'll have a lot of marketers listening to this podcast because you're on it, and I think they'd be fascinated to understand your journey to where you are now. Obviously, you're deep into it with Freddie's, but it hasn't always been that way. You've been other brands, you've been agencies, Havas, McKinsey, and you let us know that you're out in New Zealand for some time. So tell us a bit about your story.
Yeah, so I started in like a very small PPC agency called ESV Digital, and they were really good in terms of just, they're very like data driven. They had very good kind of tech. They got very early into, when you could track everything through pixels. They had their own multi-channel attribution data. So I got a lot involved in, kind of PPC, learning from a very best practice point of view, from that point of view, when it was still very manual, when you had to have huge spreadsheets doing your bidding for, time of day of week, retargeting audience versus prospecting, that now all the AI very nicely takes care of you for. But also what was really great there is it exposed me to, they had the multi-attribution tool, and that really exposed me to like cross-channel management. And actually, when a lot of things at the time were quite like last click GA, it made me get across like different channels, like, your affiliates and, those other types of channels, which are, sometimes adding, sometimes not. And that was just very insightful, to the point where I thought I wanted to go and be a data geek, learnt R programming. And I thought I wanted to do data, and that was going to be my calling in life. But then I realized that I think when you're doing the data and all that kind of thing, you feed into the decisions, but you're not making the investments. And I didn't want to really give that up. So I kind of pivoted back into marketing, went to kind of Havas for a bit before, I guess, going to client side, to Evan Cycles, where I'd had some contacts with, and started kind of that brand side, more kind of multi-channel, getting exposure to the likes of Facebook display and that kind of thing.
Were you a cyclist yourself, or were you?
I have to admit, at the time it was a bit awkward. I was not an avid cyclist. I did.
So you're like the black
get
sheep
into it.
Was there peer pressure to take it up?
There wasn't peer pressure, but everyone else really did. I think I was brought in more for the marketing side than my bike knowledge. But actually, I'd end up getting a bit into it, not like fanatically. One of actually the people who works for me got completely transformed into a very cycling enthusiastic. He was doing like kind of 2 hours commute on his bike, and testament to them. But no, but yeah, I was very fortunate, like, to, I guess, have that kind of agency background, that client side where you're going into it. And I got very, very lucky. My boss was Kiwi, moved back to New Zealand. I jokingly said to him one day, if you've got any jobs in New Zealand, give me a call. And about 3 months later, he did.
Wow.
And I was, to be honest, not really expecting it. He was like, "Can you come over here in a few months? Like 2 months or whatever," and managed to kind of turn my life around and go over there.
Were you single at the time?
I was not, but luckily my wife really wanted to live somewhere else before settling in the UK. So got very lucky that she went over there with.
Do you remember when you told her about the opportunity and her reaction?
She was ecstatic. Oh, yeah, she was like, "It's fantastic. New Zealand, like, who wouldn't want to go? Who wouldn't want to go live in New Zealand?" I think the thing that the pitch for me about that was that you can go surfing and skiing in the same day. And then I was sold. So, I packed my bikes, which
by that point you were an avid cyclist.
Didn't get used. Turns out I'm an avid hiker. That's what New Zealand turned me into. But yeah, it was great being over there. I said, like, I feel like in digital marketing, sometimes you go through, especially in the early days, you do churn through a lot of companies. And I think actually having the experience of going, spending 2.5-3 years, agency, then at different companies like, Rhyme there said New Zealand for Kathmandu, who are kind of north face of Australia, the green jackets, if you ever know them. Just having lots of experiences in different companies. Every single company that I've gone to, I've learned something different that I've then taken to the next one. Whether it's about kind of best practices around kind of meta, or like Kathmandu, I got very much exposed to brand marketing. They were very big brand marketing, and that really broadened from at that time of my career when I was a quite hardcore performance marketing, I would say, up until that point. It really gave me exposure to those like bigger channels like
billboards and stuff like that, TV.
Yeah, not quite the TV level, but they had like quite big investments into like YouTube.
Right.
They had very good seasonal product launches. They, were very good in terms of like building that hype around new products that came out at the time, and investing in, they had a lot of brand tracking. And, if there was one thing I could probably have at Freddie's that I would really want is, probably not, I think we're getting there is an element of brand tracking actually, which we used to have. But I think it's so crucial having those metrics to see your brand health, like what's your what's your awareness, what's your consideration, what's your purchase funnel. And because you can see that's an early indicator in terms of performance of, when your the perceptions of the company start to change, and actually how your advertising should be addressing those perceptions. So
not to sound like a sort of, this might be a dumb question, but like I'm interested, like how do they get that? Is it surveys or what?
I was going to ask the same, yeah.
I know it's expensive.
Yeah, it's that's why we haven't got a Freddie's yet. But yeah, it can be quite expensive. It can be, there's lots of kind of self-service of those, but it does require initial kind of investment for it. But it is a very powerful kind of insight that, I think when you get to a certain scale, it then becomes quite important to understand, like, even like just your perceptions of the brand. We did actually have a bit of it at Freddie's, and I remember the number one thing was that our awareness was really high, but our consideration was very low. At the time, it's just because we didn't have the gifting product. So people knew, especially among the female population, people knew of Freddie's, but wouldn't consider Freddie's because you can't send a gift, and that's what they considered in the flowers. So obviously with that insight, you can't do much other than launch a gifting business. But a lot of some of the insights before was around like, if your quality perceptions are starting to, tail off, that could be an early indicator, or, or if you're seeing particular shifts in certain demographics where actually you've got very good awareness of, in 30 plus, but below that, they've never heard of you. And actually maybe that's been in decline, then you need to maybe advertise a bit more to that audience. So for me, that opened up a world of like, broader than just performance marketing. There are actually, the value of like how you grow a brand, actually how you use that across your different marketing channels. And it's not just last click GA.
Important not to silo things. Yeah. And how much out of home sort of advertising is Freddie's doing or thinking of doing in the future? Yeah,
I would say at the moment we dabble, I would say. But I think the measurement of it is tough. And I do, when you don't have that measurement set up, so obviously we look at this blended CPA and we try and incorporate that. When it gets a bit noisy around when we generally do out of home, it's normally around like Valentine's Day or Mother's Day. So when you're trying to look for an uplift in that, it's pretty difficult. In the past, I've done a lot of pre and post, surveys around, awareness during the campaign. So you take a pulse of survey before the campaign, and that gives you a general sense of your kind of awareness, your consideration, your purchase intent. Then you go in and you do another survey mid-flight, and then you say, hey, we've got this kind of brand uplift. So I wouldn't say that as a business we're there yet in terms of being able to really demonstrate, like, would we invest in out of home continuously? Mm-hmm. But I think it's something that we're working out over the next kind of year, 2 years, to really look at more that brand building side, how we monitor and improve the impacts of it. And like it's really educating the business even one step further. So like, yes, there's upper funnel within digital marketing, but I think as soon as you go, even broader than that, some of the more, I'd say, trickier to measure upper funnel channels, which are more of a longer term, you need to prepare the business a lot more.
My prediction, I would expect that, and it's just a hunch. So it's like zero data on this. But like your when you start doing that above the line stuff, I think that would probably work really well as well in sort of, what did you call it earlier, reacquisition, or like lapsed subscribers, because it's almost like it's a very broad reminder. They had Freddie's, they liked it, and I might go back to that, just how you're going to measure that, I guess. Well, if they're using this they're on the same email and everything, then that's pretty simple, but it's the measurement of that stuff that I think is tricky, right, as a marketer, especially in our space in D2C. Like you were saying about Kathmandu, it's like that was the norm, and that was like there were the budgets for that. But how do you think you guys are actually, if you did spend a load of money above the line in the coming years, how do you think you would sort of measure and just like prove it out to management?
Yeah, I think actually running like geo splits and geo experiments, I think if we were looking at kind of TV, that's obviously a huge investment. A lot of them now, you work with the likes of ITV, and they've got good kind of, they've realized the scam. They've got good geo split experiments. So, actually monitoring the sales within certain regions over a long period of time is probably the kind of best way to do it from that respect. A lot of that happens within digital marketing too, but I guess it's I think a lot of incremental studies, you've got to set them up right. I think a lot of traps that people go to when they do incremental studies on, for example, Meta, is that they've been running Meta for a long time. And then someone's like, how incremental is Meta? And they'll do an A/B test, an incremental uplift study on Meta, but they've been live for 6 months before. And you've got, it takes about 2 months for you to start feeling the impact of turning off something like Meta. So they run an incremental lift study, and the incremental lift maybe isn't to the same as what it's reporting. But then if you had a blackout period, and we've done this when we did this at Boo, where we shut off Meta for, it was 3 months. Wow. And then the first month you're like, oh, this is great. Why did we have Meta? Nothing's changed. And then, month 2, month 3, you're like, oh, sales are starting to kind of drop. Your brand searches are going down, and all that kind of thing.
On Google, you mean the brand search, people searching your brand on Google?
Yeah. And you could really see, it kind of being linked. And then that's the point to run your incrementality study. But if it is, so you've got to be really careful, I think, with where you're trying to run an incrementality study on an existing channel that you've had for a long period of time, is that you've got to account for the fact that people will have been exposed. If you just launch it tomorrow, Meta shows your ads a lot to people who have been exposed to your ads in the last year. And that's actually one thing why we introduced the awareness campaign, was because it was showing too much to people that had already been served the ads. So it's, I would say that's definitely a big thing. So introducing a new channel, I say like increment, like geolift studies and stuff is probably really good, because you can get a better read on it. You've got to be very careful with, selecting the cities, and that does require someone that knows what they're doing from a kind of model, statistics point of view, so that you're not choosing London versus whatever, that you've actually got a good, geo experiments.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily easy if you're trying to run that on your own.
Well, it depends on your current customer cohorts, I suppose.
Yeah.
And how concentrated they are into certain areas. But I think that's a really good, that just literally, I was pondering out loud, again, in fact, like a dumb question, but we don't work with CTV, but I do know that the amount of targeting you can do is just insane now. I live in Colchester. I was watching something on ITV. I don't watch TV. Normally I'm all on like apps, I'm streaming. But there was an advert on TV for this was quite a few years ago now, for some Colchester like retail park or something. And then it's like the first time I'd seen like a hyper localized ad on the TV. But that's exactly right. The geo thing.
It's ironic that actually with digital marketing, it's becoming less, with cooking consent and stuff, they're collecting less of that data sometimes. And actually with more the traditional media, they're able to absolutely nail you see a TV screen.
Yeah. There's even companies doing, and you might know about this, but back when I was consulting before we started RevWise, worked with a bunch of different companies, really cool companies, tech agency, etc. And there's a tech company that's working with that, if I can remember the name, it might come back to me, but they did out of home But so you think out of home is the ultimate one that you cannot really track much about. But they did out of home that connected with lots of other types of, I think, cellular data and other things that would be able to, so you basically could sort of run geo-specific out of home to certain cohorts of people based on their mobile data and all these other sort of digital touch points that would bring it more into a kind of, if not performance marketing, then a kind of optimized, campaign, let's say, which was unthinkable a few years ago. Yeah. We've geeked out big time, which is what I was hoping for.
We have. No. That's absolutely fine. I have one last question before we might want to move on to the quickfire questions, which is, see that you're out and about going to shows and events. I think Gary mentioned that you'd been to a couple of affiliate ones this year. You met at a Philly Fest.
Yeah, shout out to a Philly Fest.
Earlier on in the year. And so you obviously like to, keep your finger on the pulse with what's going on. What piques your interest when you're going to shows and events, and what are you looking out for?
Yeah, I think it's just different perspectives of what you're, the same types of like how people are running Meta. What's, for that, like what's their team structure? And I use it as quite a good like networking opportunity as well. You meet so many people in, similar roles, all trying to do the same thing, or different companies. So I definitely try and use that as a network, or listening to the events of like when we were setting up the influencer kind of program at Freddie's, we, actually they had, they did have, speakers from, it was like HelloFresh at the time. And it just makes you aware of like what other people are doing, what are the kind of best practices, what's working quite well. So I'd say and also just an opportunity to meet people doing the same thing, so you can get a different take on what you're doing, because digital marketing changes. What's best practice last year is not going to be best practice necessarily this year. And
when you go as a brand, which you are, you get treated very well.
Yeah, you get
free drinks.
Yeah.
We've got a quick fire round then. We're going to go through these.
Yeah. So first up, what would your 12-year-old self say about who you are today and what you're doing?
Gosh, yeah, probably like, why not doing chemistry? I don't know. I think I think that would be the number one. My 12-year-old self was so clueless. But yeah, I think it is one of those things where, you'd probably be quite surprised, I would say. Always liked marketing as a concept, but probably wouldn't have anticipated the fact that it can be so, I said, like, as you can clearly tell by my conversation, I had to geek out probably a bit too much sometimes.
No, not enough.
So
perfect amount of geekery.
Yeah. So like actually being able to do something that's quite exciting like marketing, but also having that kind of analytical kind of head, I would say.
Yeah.
So that you're not having to do chemistry, you can do something a bit more exciting. Well,
cool.
Sorry to the
we find it exciting, but we find it exciting.
Yeah.
What's what would be the proudest moment in your career?
Gosh, I really should have looked at these quick.
I would say proudest moment in your life, but it's obviously going to be becoming a dad.
Well, no, I would say more at Freddie's is like, I think one of the things that I've managed to do is, turn around from having a business where they were in quite a steep decline of customer base, managing to stabilize that and return it to growth, and managing to, get some of these channels, like I'd never done influencers before Freddie's, but, so you go to events, you network, you meet people, you talk to, we were talking to all the like Wild, we were talking to everyone to see how their different approaches to doing it to grow it. So I'd say definitely during the work career, I would say just that whole journey I've been on over the last 2 years. Bloody hell. 2 years, to just really, like accelerate growth is kind of what you're in it for. Sometimes it's good with performance marketing. Sometimes it's mad. It's the perils of the job, I think.
That's it. Yeah, you just got to
ride the waves.
Go on that ride, exactly. And No, you've certainly done that. And again, I think you're a great example to lots of young marketers who are in the field. That, you've got to branch out. You've got to keep expanding your horizons, like to learn new things, new perspectives, outlooks, approaches. Because at the end of the day, it's all about testing, trialing, but ultimately you've got to take a view on something. Nothing is an exact science, and a one size fits all. So I think that's a really, really important point for anyone listening.
Yeah.
And data wins arguments. That's what I'm taking from this as well. Obviously got data behind everything you do. If you had to delete every app on your phone, except for 3, what would you keep?
What would I keep? Gosh, I'd probably be very boring and just keep mail. I'm, probably sucked into mail. I'm still probably like an Instagram. I do get a bit sucked into TikTok. I think you just, that's the problem with being in the industry. You kind of, unfortunately, I know it's a lot of people say you don't necessarily have to be in there, but I think with something like TikTok and Instagram, you do need to kind of live the channel a tiny bit at sometimes a detriment of
losing out.
I mean,
selfishly,
now I don't have any time anyway, being a dad. So that's
selfishly, I'm pleased to hear it whenever someone says something like that, because I feel like I'm not alone. Like it's.
So what's one moment in your career that no one on LinkedIn knows about?
I guess it's. I would probably say like the time at McKinsey is probably a bit of a fun one. I stayed there for three months. I went through the 3-month process of getting into McKinsey, which is not an easy feat. And then the reason why it's so short on my CV, I would probably love to, if I was younger in my career, I would have probably stayed there. But for me, I just found out that I was a dad. And I've spoken to a lot of people there around kind of like, how do you manage the work-life balance and stuff like that? And, people do it, and it's, it sounded like, a thing of, getting them work a bit, drop your kids off at school, work a bit, do a bit of bedtime, work a bit. And just for me and like, where I wanted to be as a dad, I kind of, really value the work-life balance and that kind of thing, and felt like that just didn't want that for myself.
I love the honesty.
Yeah. If your kids watch this back one day, they'll be grateful.
They'll be grateful. Yeah.
Finally, what's the single biggest opportunity that most brands are missing out on right now?
I would be disappointed if I didn't say gift with purchase based on everything I'm saying there. But it's only for a select, I think you've got to have the right thing. I think it's just, to be honest, I think a lot of brands are doing it and they're coming to it, but it's that real investment in creative, and whether it's like, building mass UGC or just really investing in great creative people. Because one of the reasons why I got into marketing was, to build a brand. I love performance marketing, but also I love brand marketing as well. And I feel like in a way, some aspects, performance marketing did kill marketing in a way. And I think what you're seeing now with the emergence of like so much emphasis on the algorithms being placed on creative and that kind of thing, you're having to creative's easier to do, but if you really want to stand out, you have to do it very well. So I think it's that really investment in emotional creative that really, makes you, say feel something, but that drives action off the base of just really good creatives. I think that's definitely where we're placing a lot of our kind of investments in the next year.
I look forward to seeing it on my feed.
Yeah.
James, thank you so much for doing this. It's been a great chat. Thanks for dropping all the knowledge bombs.
Great.
Yeah, lots of hot takes, and thanks again.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.